Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey guys, haven't shared it too many times, but one of the biggest epiphanies that I've ever had in my life was the first day that I started reading personal development, entrepreneurship, business books. And the day that I started reading those books, that was the day when my life changed. And ever since then, I've never stopped. So I've compiled the top 30 books and also the top 30 success quotes that every man must live by in a simple guide. You can download it for free at kfmfree.com. Again, that's kfmfree.com to really start growing in every aspect of your life. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Joel Runyon, the founder of ImpossibleHQ.com and Impossible Ventures. What he does is he helps people train their body and their minds to push the limits and to do something impossible. I can go through a lot of fun things that he's done, a lot of exciting challenges that he's done, but you know, I'd rather you hear it from the man himself. So Joel, I'm happy to have you here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we kickstart off every show, Joel, with a favorite success quote of the guest or something that they've lived by, a motto, a creed. So what do you got for us, and then explain why you chose that?
The quote I've got for you guys today is, "It's always impossible until it's done," and that's by Nelson Mandela. And I like that because, one, it kind of shifted the way I started thinking about the word impossible, but it also makes impossible into a challenge, but one that's worth going after and one that is kind of worthy of investing in and going after. So yeah, it's always impossible until it's done, because you know everybody's going to say something's impossible, and then as soon as someone does it, they're like, oh yeah, I knew someone could do that. So
yeah,
it's a good impetus to challenge yourself.
Anytime I hear that, you know, everyone thought it was impossible until someone said it was done, I think of that Roger Bannister, the guy who ran that 4-minute mile, and then just weeks after, high school kids were doing the 4-minute mile.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how much of that can be just a mental block, people thinking it's impossible, and so it is. And then as soon as you dare to challenge that, it starts to break apart.
I like that, and I think that gives us a little taste of who you are, but I want to know, you know, take a few steps back and dive deep into how this all started. Were you always like this daring, risky, like, you know, challenging type of kid growing up? So, you know, take us back a few steps here and walk us through how you got started with what you do here.
Yeah, so I graduated college in 2009. I was probably like most college graduates. I did all the things you're supposed to do in college. I got, you know, like a perfect GPA, double major, did a bunch of stuff abroad, played basketball, threw javelin and track. Did all the things you're supposed to do, and then as I kind of got out, as I graduated, I was supposed to do sort of the next thing, but you know, get a job. But 2009 was a pretty tough year to try to get one of those. There weren't many around, and basically was struggling to get a job for about 9 months. Ended up getting like a part-time gig in November, December for UPS, doing like seasonal delivery work. And did that for 3 weeks. Then got fired like right after Christmas because that's what they do as seasonal workers. And ended up 9 months out of college, basically not doing much with my life, sitting in my parents' basement and watching a lot of people with blogs or just different stories that were doing really cool things. And I want to do stuff like that, like Chris Gilbo traveling to every country in the world. One of my buddies, Sean Ogle, just quit his job, moved to Thailand. I want to do all these things, but like I didn't have any money. I couldn't travel. I didn't know anything about starting a business, so I obviously couldn't do that. And so I started listing out all these things that I wanted to do, but they felt like they were impossible. And then I just kind of felt demotivated for a long time. And I was like, well, that'd be great for someone to do, but other people get to do that, not me, because I don't have any basis in doing any of that stuff. And so I did that for a while, probably a couple months, until and it literally just got sick. I got sick and tired of waiting around for stuff to happen to me. And I think I just got tired of like wallowing in my own misery. Maybe I did that for 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. And then I was just like, okay, I don't even care if you can't do this, Joel. Like, I kind of this internal dialogue with myself. I don't even care if you can't do this. You can at least try it.
Yeah.
And then when you fail, because you will fail, because I wasn't in a really good headspace at that time. But when you fail, then you can come back and say, okay, yeah, I can't do it. But until that happens, you have to at least try it. You can't just cop out without actually giving it a shot. And so I had this list already. We called it my impossible list. And I was like, fine, I'll start off and I'll do something on the list. And one of them was like, travel the world. Another one was start a business. And I'm like, I can't do that because I don't have any money. I can't do that because I don't have any experience. I can't even get a job at Starbucks. And so one of the things that I want to do, though, was run a triathlon. And I realized I didn't have any excuses for not being able to run a triathlon. I was like, I can't travel the world. I can't really start my own business, but I can run around the block. And then I get on my bike and I can bike around the block and train up for this thing. And so I signed up for an indoor triathlon, which is not even a real triathlon. It's like a fake triathlon. And that was my first race experience. And I did it. And it seems really stupid and it seems really basic. But when I finished that race, I sort of realized, like, Joel, you've been building this up to be something that's impossible for the longest time. And all of a sudden it's not. Like, you just told yourself the last 3 or 4 months that this was impossible, and now it's not. So, what are the other things out there that you want to do that you think are impossible right now? And they're not really impossible. You just haven't done them yet. And so then I kind of started on this journey of trying to push my limits and see what else I was able to do. And so I started running more triathlons, going farther distances, did everything up to half Ironman, started getting into running, started running some marathons, or started running some 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, ultra marathons. And then I wrote the blog because initially it was going to be a way for me just to keep myself accountable. If I put something out there, then I'd have to follow up and do it. I can't just say I'm going to do something and not do it. So it was an accountability aspect, and nobody really read it for 6 months. And then, I started kind of sharing about how not just, hey, I'm trying to do these different things, but here's how you can also do it, and how you can, here's some of the lessons I learned, how you can break things down if you're trying to do something similar. And that's when people started reading. That's when it started taking off a little bit more and growing from there.
So what happened to you in that moment where you're like, oh crap, like I just ran this marathon, never thought I could do this. And then you kind of started, creating this list of things that you would like to do that you thought were impossible. Like, I just feel like that was like an aha moment, like something just changed inside you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like outside that, off the treadmill at that first, because indoor triathlon was it's like a 10-minute swim, a 30-minute, you're on like a 10-minute swim in a pool, a 30-minute bike on a stationary bike, and then you run for 20 minutes on a treadmill. So it's kind of an interesting format. But I finished like off that treadmill, and I got off it, and I was like, huh, I'm done. And that was like, yeah, like it was one of those things. You build these things up in your mind to be so difficult and so impossible. And one of the things that I did, I took it back a step. I said I wasn't even going to do an open water triathlon. I just said I was going to do an indoor one. And then I finished it, and I just realized it was that moment when I got off that treadmill, and I was like, listen, that was hard, and I'm not necessarily ready to do another one tomorrow, but it wasn't impossible. And I'm pretty sure if you train for this, this is something you can get into and you can do a lot more of. And that's sort of the moment where I started asking myself, like, are you just really are those really impossible? Or are you just saying that because it's easier than actually trying to go out and actually do them? And for me, that was the case. It was easier for me to just, write it off and say, oh, that's impossible. It's way too hard. It's too difficult. And write it off from the beginning rather than actually saying, you know what, maybe I'm not a runner. I'd never run more than a 5K before I started running triathlons. And, I decided, okay, well, let's see if I can become a runner or teach myself or learn something new. And when that happened, I realized, there's always, there's always these outer limits of what, you think you can do. And as soon as you start poking them, as soon as you start, testing them, you find that those limits start to bend and they start to move backwards. And all of a sudden they start expanding. And when I realized that, whether it's an indoor triathlon or it's a 56-mile ultra marathon, like every single time I do something that is a new kind of frontier for me, I start realizing how much you're capable of if you're willing to put in the work and test yourself out there.
Yeah, and one thing that kind of just stood out to me was earlier you were talking about how other people get to do it and not me. And I think that's just something that kind of sticks in with a lot of guys. I think that's very common to just think like, oh, he gets to do that, I don't. But what was that moment for you when you realized like, I can do this? Like, what else can I do? And almost like the gates of like life opened up. You're like, I could do this, I could do that, or at least try.
Yeah, so I read a book actually. It's called A Million Miles in a Thousand Years by Donald Miller, and it's got some religious overtones, but it's not like super religious-y, so don't get turned off by that. But the idea is looking at your life like a story, and basically the author had a really popular earlier book, and they turned it into a movie, and he basically takes his life lessons about like how you take a book and turn it into a movie, and he starts applying it to what if you start looking at your life like it was a movie, and every single obstacle or decision you come to is a chance to sort of make your own decision about writing your own story. I think Joe Rogan also had a really good video on this like 6 months ago, or I saw a clip on it. He's like, be the hero of your own story. And he encouraged you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times this is my biggest problem for a long time. I waited for stuff to happen to me. Like I didn't think I could do it on my own.
Right.
And so I just waited around hoping stuff would happen, and all these things that I desperately wanted to achieve or do. And I was hoping that maybe I was lucky enough to just get picked for it.
And how did you feel when you were just kind of waiting for stuff to happen? Like right now, think about your parents' basement to where you are now, and also like what you've been doing over the past few years.
It's you feel really helpless because all you have to do is like you're just waiting. Like that is like your MO. You're saying I'm waiting around and hopefully something will happen to me. And you have no control. You're a victim. It's a terrible place to kind of put yourself. But I
think it's the worst place. I think nothing can happen in that place.
Yeah, I mean, like unless like you get struck by lightning or something, like you basically decide to put yourself in a place where nothing can happen to you unless you literally get struck by lightning. Like you take no responsibility. Everything that happens to you is someone else's fault, or it's because life is unfair, etc. And for some people in the world, I think that's the case. You know, if you're living on $2 a day, maybe that's a much tougher hole to get out of. But for a lot of people, it's more of an idea of you put yourself in this place where you're waiting to get picked. And as soon as you say, I don't know if I can do that, but I'm going to pick myself and I'm going to start betting on myself because I don't know if I can do it, but I think I might be able to figure it out. That's the moment you can start figuring stuff out. And that's the moment you can kind of start going after stuff more aggressively and find the things out there that are maybe on the edge of what you thought you could do and actually go out and do them. But yeah, when I was waiting around for stuff to happen to me, I was in a terrible place mentally. I kind of think I checked out just watching TV sometimes because like, it doesn't matter what I do, nothing's going to work out for me. So why even try?
Yeah. Just watch the whole Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad.
Yeah. And then it's just a downward spiral from
That's
there.
Your life.
And it's like when you find out you have your own story going on, you don't need to escape into like movies and TV stuff. You've got all these things that you're working on doing, and cool things that you're trying to build, and TV becomes almost secondary. It's funny how I'll watch a TV show here and there, but like I don't, that's not the majority of my time like it was. It used to be, that's what that's how I passed the time because it was time to pass. Now I'm trying to find more time.
And now going into Impossible Ventures, that's something that you started, and kind of like building your business. Because at first, I know that your blog, you started as more like an accountability platform to your own goals, and then slowly you're like, oh my gosh, like this audience grew and it created a lot of opportunity for you. So obviously this was something new for you. So can you talk about this side of your challenges?
Yeah. So Impossible Ventures. So for the first part, like Impossible wasn't even a business at first, right? It was literally a impetus for me to do something interesting with my life. And the gauge was if writing is getting hard, it's probably because I'm not doing enough interesting things in my life. If I'm bored with my blog, it's because I'm probably bored with my life. And it's been a pretty good correlation. If you're doing interesting stuff, it's much easier to write about it. If you're sitting in your house watching TV all the time, it's a lot harder to write about how interesting that is. And so initially that was my thing, because at this point I was still living in my parents' basement, no job, etc. But I decided I was going to start trying things out that I want to do. So I decided I was going to try triathlons, and I decided I was going to just try different positions. Even if I couldn't get paid very much, I was going to like go into a couple companies that I knew I was somewhat interested in and learn about stuff. And so I found like an entry level position at a internet marketing firm in Indianapolis. I was in Chicago at the time, and basically moved down to Indianapolis from Chicago to work a zero salary, all commission sales job for this internet marketing company, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I liked the internet and I knew I liked marketing kind of, and I messed around with that. So over the next couple of years, long story short on that, I ended up working my way up to the marketing director, ended up getting recruited by another company, working for a couple Fortune 500 companies doing marketing consulting over 2 years, and then got to a point where I just wanted to like get out of it. And one of the companies I'd gone to was super bureaucratic, not really my speed at all. And I had been doing a little bit of marketing consulting on the side at this point. Like, this is a couple of years into my blog. I was still blogging while I was working. A lot of people think they were going to quit their job and blog all the time. And I had a job for 2 years while I was, starting the blog and figuring out what I was trying to make it. And then in 2011, late in the year, I ended up quitting my job. In 2012, I started Impossible Ventures, which was at that point all 100% marketing consulting, which I had been doing since the last few years. And then it's kind of brought my other businesses in, both Impossible, and then I have a couple paleo websites, Ultimate Paleo Guide, and then we have a couple apps out as well. So it's sort of become the umbrella where we incubate businesses, we help them grow, and then we kind of spin them off in their own separate units.
I see. So from this experience, like, that was kind of critical. You're saying like, I didn't just quit my job and then start blogging. That's actually what I did, and it was a really bad idea. It's taken like a year to really like make something happen. But you were working on this and kind of building it while you had your job. And then when it kind of grew to a point where like you kind of transitioned out and went into your own thing. I think that's a really big point, because a lot of guys are, do I just quit? I don't know what I want to do. I don't advise that you just quit your job up and straight. I mean, that would be doing the impossible. But
the biggest thing for me was like, at that point, like when I first started my blog, like I didn't even have a job. Like I couldn't even get it. Like I was applying, like I applied to Starbucks, Caribou, Target. I couldn't get a call back from Starbucks. So like for me, one of the impossible things was like getting a job so I'd have some sort of income. And then once I did that, I really treated it more as an apprenticeship. Like I was getting paid to learn. And I think a lot of people don't see that. Like for me, having that job experience was critical in learning all the things I needed to learn so I could start my own consulting thing, so I could finally quit. And there's ways, this is what I think a lot of people miss when they think, oh, I just want to be an entrepreneur, control my own time. There are ways to be entrepreneurial while still in your job. Like you can look at your job like a business and say like, okay, who are the people here that need help? How can I help them? How can I make the people that are in charge of things look good? And so they want to keep me around. They want to promote me. They want to pay me more. They want to keep me happy. And I get more input on things because I'm so integral into the business. And a lot of people don't think like that. They think, okay, I'm doing a rote job. Anyone can do it. I'm just going to show up and maybe do work for half the day and then try not to get caught surfing the web the other half. And if you really look at it like an opportunity to get paid to learn, then you can go seek out those people who, those mentorship opportunities or those apprenticeship opportunities. And typically those do happen in smaller companies, but I think if you look for it, you can find that opportunity in a lot of different places.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's huge, and I think that's a common challenge that a lot of guys like wanting to join this entrepreneurial space often face. All with like some of the challenges you've done. You've done quite a few interesting things here. When you were first starting to do this, how did you build that momentum to really accomplish these goals and challenges? Because obviously, when you started, you don't have a history of just like crushing it in all areas of your life and all that. So like talking about momentum and sticking with the habits of what you're doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing was I started small, right? Like it's embarrassing, but like go to the archives on my blog and go to the first couple posts that I've ever got, and they're about doing an indoor triathlon. And it's funny, but that was like the hardest thing. Like that was really hard because one, it's an ego hit because you're like, oh, this is so basic, whatever. But then you're also saying, I still don't know if I can do it. So going out and doing the first one and really that feeling, taking that feeling from your first accomplishment and immediately rolling it into the next thing. Because a lot of people, I talk about this a lot, but a lot of people wait around for motivation to strike. and then they're like, okay, I'm going to go do all the things that I want to do. And the problem with that is motivation lasts about 15 seconds. And so what you have to do is sort of take any spark that you get and roll that into like a compelled action for your next event. So as soon as I finished the first triathlon, I was like, wow, that was not as hard as I thought it was. Maybe I should try the next level. And so I signed up for a sprint triathlon relatively quick. And then I signed up for an Olympic triathlon at the end of the summer. And so that forced me to basically start training for these things and take it seriously and not just, oh, okay, I had a one-off victory and I'm not going to do anything with that. I basically started the ball rolling. Like I got, that first little bit of snowpack together, and then I just started kind of pushing it down the hill. And a lot of people, they'll pack that snow together and they'll just sit it down and then they don't do anything with it. And so you kind of have to take that, any excitement you get from those small victories, and then roll them into another small victory that you can actually accomplish, and then keep going. And what happens is you can start accomplishing stuff pretty quickly if you really focus on it.
So kind of like an avalanche, like a wave, just starts small and then it just slowly grows over time until you've got something big. You've obviously got momentum.
Yeah.
All right, I like that. Let's just hop into the knowledge round. It's going to be just some rapid fire questions to bring out some nuggets of wisdom here. So, are you ready for the knowledge round, Joel?
I'm not, but I can get ready super quick.
All right. If you want to grow to the highest levels that you've ever been at in your life, go to kfmfree.com and you can download the top 30 books and success quotes that every man must live by. Every guy should read. If you want to grow, if you want to achieve greatness in life, you're going to have to read and surround yourself with the greatest minds of the world. So I've done all of the hard work for you. I've read hundreds of books. I've listened to hundreds of audiobooks. I've gone through and found the best quotes that you'll need to succeed and thrive and grow and become the man that you want to be. So go to kfmfree.com and I'll send it to you right now. kfmfree.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. And Joel, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
Waiting. I always wanted to wait for stuff to happen to me, and that was the biggest issue. And once I fixed that, a lot of other stuff comes. You always have to deal with different issues, but the biggest thing that I always had to deal with was, there's a set structure up to about 22 years old where they tell you exactly what to do. They take you through the grade system, then go to college unless for some reason something happens, and they act like it's like this big thing if you don't go to college. So everybody goes to college, and then you get done with college and nobody tells you that, like, they say go get a job, but they don't tell you anything specific about, hey, you can literally do anything you want. And the idea that I had to wait around and have somebody bestow something on me, or maybe that's too fancy of a language, but I think a lot of people feel like that, where they have to be told exactly what to do, and then they feel like they're able to do it, whether it's a certification, a degree, etc. So getting beyond that was a huge issue for me.
Yeah, I think that is for most there. And can you name a person who's had a tremendous impact on your life, maybe a mentor? Why and how has this person impacted your life? What did he or she say?
I'm going to go with my first boss. His name's Todd Muffley. Most people don't know about him, but I would say, like, he was the first guy that gave me a shot in business. I got turned down by so many companies I can't even list them all here, but he was willing to give me a shot. It was a crappy job, and he paid me nothing. But I got to learn from him for the first couple months, and then I ended up working for him for a little over a year and a half. And we had a great relationship. I learned a lot from him. We don't necessarily run our businesses the same, but he gave me a huge shot to get started, and I learned a ton from him. And I wouldn't be where I am now without him.
Yeah, I like that. And you mentioned what was that book? It's a million.
A Million Miles in 1,000 Years.
A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. Yeah, I just added that on the Amazon list. But what are two more influential books that have had an impact on your journey?
So I typically tell people that one. I would say it's not a book, but Chris Gilbo's blog was huge, because that was one of those things that I was looking at. And I basically got to a point where I could have taken like a normal-ish job at downtown Chicago, or kept doing the things the way I was going to be doing them, and ended up doing things my way. and that was, one of the big influences there. I don't know, from a life change perspective, the Million Miles book was a big one for me. Like, it just changed the way I looked at how I make decisions, because it's not about waiting for stuff, it's about going out and proactively doing it.
Yeah, really powerful. And I got a scenario here for you, Joel. Here it is. So imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do, and what would you tell him not to do?
I don't know if my parents would like this, but I'd probably have him. Well, I was gonna say I'd have him drop out of college and start working now, but like, thinking back to how much time I had in college, I would just say, take all of your extra time instead of taking naps, playing video games, or messing around. Like, start working on things that are curious to you and get started now. Because if you get started now, like, if I had 2 more years, like, onto my progression where I am right now, like, I would be so far ahead. I think of that all the time about, like, my 18-year-old self. Like, if I had took whatever I put into college and gave that to my 18-year-old self in 4 years, a head start, like, where would I be now? And so it doesn't matter if you're 18, 20, or 40 or whatever you are. The biggest thing you can start, there's like, what, a Japanese proverb, like, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, and
10 years ago, yeah, and then
or 10 years ago, and second best is today. So the biggest thing is just get started and just being curious and experimenting with stuff, and not really caring if you fail, especially at first, because you're just trying to find what you like and what you're interested in, and kind of, what draws your attention.
Yeah, I like that. Just kind of reflecting back on where you were then in the parents' basement, UPS driving, seasonal driver, getting knocked out of applications for Target and Starbucks, to where you are now with all the challenges you've accomplished with ultra marathons, and quite a lot. I was looking at your impossible list, so you got quite a list of incredible things you've accomplished there. What would you say is, like, now, like, your philosophy on life and success?
I like the idea of just keep going, and the idea of just kind of finding out what you're made of consistently, and putting yourself in these physical challenge situations where you're forced to really come to terms with yourself and, like, learn about yourself, and then apply those lessons in other areas of life. So that's one of the reasons I like ultra marathons. It takes you to a point beyond where you think you're capable of, and then it asks you, once you're beyond that, like, do you want to keep going? And you have a very visceral reaction of quitting or continuing and going forward. And there aren't huge crowds involved. There aren't, there's not a billion people out there. It's typically you alone in the wilderness, and you have to ask yourself if you're going to keep going or not. And I think that's as close as you can get to, like, an analogy for how you treat other things in your life. And I really like the idea of just finding out who you are, constantly testing your limits, and seeing, what you really can do if you're not afraid to kind of go for it.
I love that. And now, just kind of looking at what you're doing today, like, what's really getting you out of bed in the morning? What's exciting you? What current things are you working on now?
So right now I'm working on building a team at Impossible. For the longest time it was just myself, and right now we're working on building out a team, an editor, a couple community positions, and then I've got a couple other projects. Ultimate Paleo Guide is one. We started releasing a couple apps, so we have, like, a small app development business going as well. And yeah, it's just kind of doing things on a bigger level than just the blog. So it's a lot of fun to sort of, I've done that in a lot of other areas of my life, and now I'm trying to take it to the business side of things and really go at it hard from there.
Just go ahead and give yourself a plug on how my audience can best reach you.
Yeah, so the place you can find pretty much everything is impossiblehq.com. I have a podcast called Impossible FM, if you check it out on iTunes. But impossiblehq.com will have links to all my blogs, all my podcasts, videos, etc. And then I also have, if you guys are into the paleo diet at all, I have a great resource site called ultimatepaleoguide.com on that. And I have an app out called paleo.io, and it's one of the top 20 apps in iTunes health and fitness over the last couple months. So yeah, I think that's enough plugs for me.
All right, Joel. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your time with me, and sharing your story and your life lessons here. So I appreciate that.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and I'll see you in the next episode.